Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this beautiful Snow Berries Blanket Shawl. This is a nice thick shawl. It's worked up in simple stitches. It's a triangle shawl, and I've attached some optional tassels. So we're going to learn how to make the shawl itself, and then later on in the video, I'm going to show you, if you'd like to learn how to make tassels for your shawl, how to make those and attach them to your piece and do all the finished work as well. The finished shawl measures so it's a triangle shawl, so down each side of the triangle is about 50 inches, and then across the top where you would wrap it around your neck and shoulders is about 55 inches across the top edge of the shawl. And then these tassels are not included in those finished dimensions, so they'll add a little bit of length to that as well. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a 10mm crochet hook. Now, just as a side note, this one is called N/P. Some manufacturers call the 10mm a P hook. It doesn't really matter the letter for this hook, but as long as you have the 10mm crochet hook, you'll be just fine. And then for the yarn, I'm going to be using 5 balls of the Hometown USA from Lion Brand yarn. This particular color is kind of a purple tweed with some rainbow flecks through it, and it's called Sioux City Tweed. Now, each ball of this is 64 yards, and if you need to substitute yarn, just look for, on the yarn label, the number 6 super bulky yarn. And again, I'll be using 5 balls of this. Each one is 64 yards. If you're using the Hometown USA in the solids, the yardage can vary slightly, so just be mindful of that when you're selecting your yarn as well. Okay, so to begin, we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Now, as a side note, I wanted to mention that earlier in the video, I have a different hook, and later in the video, I have a different hook. I just want to assure you it is the same size hook. It's just a different hook. I happened to grab a different hook later, but still use the 10mm, which is this one and the other hook that you'll see later on in the video. So what we're going to do first is chain 4. So to make a chain, wrap yarn around hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, then what we're going to do is join in the chain farthest from our hook to create a ring. So insert the hook in the chain farthest from the hook, bring up a loop, now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. Now this pattern is a little bit unusual because we're going to work round 1 into the center of the ring, but our shawl will be worked flat. And you'll kind of see what I mean as, you know, we unfold with the rows, but it is a little bit unusual in that regard. So for row 1, what we're going to do is chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then in the center of the ring, we're going to work 2 double crochet, chain 2, and then 3 double crochet. So to make a double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, insert the hook into the center of the ring, bring up a loop, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. So again, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So that was 1, and then work another double crochet. Okay, then we're going to chain 2. I'm sliding things over a little bit, so I have plenty of room. Chain 2, 1, 2, and then work 3 double crochets into the center of the ring. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so row 1 will kind of look like this. It doesn't really look triangular at this point, but as we work a few more rows together, you'll start to see the triangle shape. This will eventually be the point of our triangle. Okay, so for row 2, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and turn. Okay, so that point is still facing upward. In the very first stitch at the base of the chain, which is a little bit unusual when you're working with double crochets, but go to the very base of that chain and you'll find a loop down there. You're going to work 2 double crochets into that same stitch. So 1 and 2. Just like that. And then we're going to work a double crochet. Let me just get a little bit more yarn in each of the next 2 stitches. So work a double crochet in the next stitch, a double crochet into the next stitch, and now we're at the corner, the top point of our triangle. This will later be the bottom part. This will go across the back of the neck, but we sort of work this upside down. Okay, so in this corner space, we're going to work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, then work a chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 more double crochet, 1 and 2, all in that corner space. Okay, then we're going to work the next side, down the next side of our triangle. Work a double crochet into that first stitch that you come to off of the corner space that we just worked. Work another double crochet into the next stitch, and now we're going to work into the turning chain. So remember we did a chain and then turned our work. That turning chain created a space. So here's the last double crochet and then that turning chain, and then there's sort of like a hole in the middle. That's the turning chain space. We're going to work 3 double crochets into that turning chain space. So 1, 2, and 3. So row 2 is complete. And as you can see, when we shape it up a little bit, it looks very much like a triangle. Now, once again, we're working this upside down. When you wear your shawl, you'll flip it over and wrap it around you like this. This will be the bottom point of the shawl, okay? So let's move on to row 3 rather, not round, row. Row 3 is the row that you'll repeat over and over and over for the remainder of your project. So if you ever need to back up and re-watch row 3, feel free to do that at any time. Okay, so for row 3, we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn our work. Now once again, at the base of that chain, that stitch at the base of the chain, we're going to work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and then we're going to work a double crochet in each stitch up the side of the triangle until we get to that corner space again, okay? So work a double crochet. Now I wanted to mention that if you notice there's more side stitches this time. This is because our triangle is growing, both the sides and the height of our triangle. So each time you repeat row 3, it'll be worked the same exact way, except you'll be adding more and more of these side stitches each time. And once we finish this row, I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so we're just going to work all the stitches basically until you run out of stitches and you get to the corner space. So we're at the corner space. Now the corner space for every single row will be worked exactly the same. 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and then a chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 double crochet, all in that same space to create that corner of our triangle. Okay, and then we'll work stitches down the side. Once again, you'll basically just work stitches until you run out of stitches, till you get to that turning chain. Okay, so we're working stitches all the way down. Whoops, work a double crochet in each stitch. Okay, and here's our last stitch of the row. Now, once again, we've arrived at the turning chain space. So we're going to do the same thing we did before and work 3 double crochets into the turning chain space. So that was 1, this is 2, and then 3. Okay? So our triangle is growing quite a bit. Now when you use a large hook like this and very chunky yarn, your triangle and your project will keep growing. So once again, just keep repeating row 3 over and over and over and over again. Now, if you notice, we have even more stitches down the side. So as you keep repeating row 3, the sides of your triangle are going to get longer every single time. So I'm going to work my rows for a little while until I run out of this first ball of yarn, and then we're going to rejoin in just a moment. I'm going to show you how to join the next ball of yarn on, and then we'll continue on with our project, and later on in the video I'll show you how to add those optional tassels to your project as well. Okay, I've been working my rows, and now I am just about to the end of this ball of yarn. Now there's a little bit left, but not quite enough to work a whole nother row. So what I'm going to do is cut the yarn, leaving a tail about 8 inches or so, and I'm going to save this for my tassel because it's not quite enough to work another row. Now when you're ready to join on a new ball, whether you're switching colors or sticking to one color like I am, you can grab your next ball of yarn, and what we're going to do is simply tie the yarn on. So go ahead and fasten off, wrap the yarn around the hook, and just pull it through the loop to make a nice secure knot. Now there's lots of ways to join on a new ball of yarn, and I know a lot of you have your favorite ways. This is just the way I like to do it. If you do have a preferred method, please feel free to do that. So we fastened off with the other yarn, and I'm going to save it for my tassel later. Grab the new strand that you'll be joining, insert your hook back into that same stitch. See that same stitch where we left off? Bring the new yarn through. Whoops, let's try that again. Bring the new yarn through, and then we're just going to tie it right on. Again, if you have a preferred way, just do that instead. Okay, now we have some tails. We're going to deal with those later. Reinsert your hook back into that same stitch where you just tied the new yarn on, and bring up a loop, and now we're ready to continue. So I just wanted to point out that our shawl is growing. It's grown quite a bit with that first ball of yarn. So you can just keep going by repeating the same row, and then you're just ready to continue working the pattern. Okay, so I'm going to keep working my rows, and then once I've used up all 5 balls of the yarn, we're going to rejoin, and I'm going to show you how to work the tassels next if you've never made a tassel before. Now there are fancy tools. I like to just make them with my hands and a pair of scissors. So I'm going to show you how my favorite way to do it is. And also just be mindful to save a little bit of yarn. If you do want to add tassels to your shawl, save a little bit of yarn at the end to use for the tassels as well. Now, if you get yourself into a pinch and you need to use up all the yarn, you can always grab maybe a solid color of the super bulky yarn if you have some on hand. Maybe pick out one of these accent colors and do some solid colors. So you could do that as well. So I'm going to continue working my rows, and then once we get towards the end and we're ready to do the tassel part, we'll rejoin and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I repeated my rows until my shawl got nice and big. Now, if you want to just have your shawl as is, you can do that. If you want to add some tassels onto it, though, I would recommend either holding out the yarn ahead of time and then working to the end till there's no more yarn left, or you can do what I did and make your tassels ahead of time and just kind of stop right before you run out of yarn. So I went ahead and made 2 of them. We're going to make the third one together because I'm going to put one at each point of our triangular shaped shawl. Okay, so I have 2 here. And let me just slide everything out of the way so I can show you how to make it. Okay, so I slid everything out of the way, and like I said before, I made 2 tassels. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but I worked my shawl until I ran out of yarn, basically, on all accounts, the tassels and the shawl. But the sides of the triangle are each 50 inches long up the sides, and then across the top of the triangle is 55 inches across. So just if you are kind of looking for similar dimensions as mine. So I've made 2. Let's put these aside. I'm going to show you how to make the third one. So what you're going to do, I have just enough yarn. I kind of made one just to make sure I did. But we're going to measure about 6 to 8 inches of yarn and then cut it. And then another piece about 6 to 8 inches long. Mine might be a little longer than that. And then you're going to hold these aside. So 2 strands of yarn, and then you're going to grab your other yarn. Now, if you totally run out of yarn, just pick out a color from here, like this pretty orange or yellow or something like that, and you can make kind of coordinating tassels if you have some other yarn on hand. So if you run out of yarn, no worries, you can still add some tassels with some other yarn, some coordinating yarn. There's also some teal in here as well. Okay, so we're just going to hold the yarn and let the front hang down the front of our hand, and we're going to wrap it 12 times around all 4 fingers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so let those 2 strands hang down the front. Now you're going to carefully slip your hand out, and you'll have kind of like a bundle loop of yarn. Grab one of the strands of yarn, run it through the middle of the bundle, and then you're going to tightly tie it at the top of the bundle, making sure those 2 strands are still hanging at the bottom of your bundle. Okay, so just tie it very, very tightly like that. And then you're going to keep these sort of out of the way because we're going to use those to tie them onto our shawl in just a moment. Okay, so then what we're going to do is grab the second strand of yarn, and you're just going to kind of lay it down and lay the little bundle on top of that strand of yarn. And then we're going to tie the top. Now, it doesn't need to be perfectly tied the first time around. You can really shift things around and slide things down if you need to. So tie it and then tie it again to make a nice secure knot. Now, one of these strands will lay very nicely straight down. The other strand is going to sort of stick out the front like this. So just grab your tapestry needle and thread it. Make sure you're using a tapestry needle with a nice large eye on it because we're using bulky yarn. And then just kind of tuck it behind there where you just tied. Okay, and that'll kind of help it lay down a little bit. Otherwise, it'll look a little bit messy. The next thing we want to do is flip your tassel over, and you're going to have all these loops at the bottom. So cut all the loops just to make sure you don't have any loops left and that everything's hanging straight. And then your yarn might shed a little bit with this bulky yarn, is very fibery. So then what you want to do, you can kind of give it a little shake if you need to, maybe over a trash can instead of your table like I'm doing here. Then what you'll want to do is hold your tassel and flip it over so all these bottom pieces are lined up, and see how they're all different lengths. You'll just want to cut all the way across, just like that. And then you can sort of shake it off, get all those fibers off. And then if you really want to be okay, so then what I like to do is just, because we're making these with our hand and we're sort of giving them a haircut, just make sure they're all about the same length. This guy in the middle is a little bit long, so I'm going to give this one a little bit of a haircut just to make sure everything looks nice and uniform. And now they look about the same. So I still have that piece that's sticking up on my other tassels, so I'm just going to go ahead and tuck those in as well. So now we're ready to attach our tassels to our shawl. So you'll want to keep these top pieces intact because we're going to use those to tie onto the points of our shawl. So I'm just tucking those strands in. Okay, now, and if you have a long piece from doing that, just snip that off, okay? Once again, if you need to clear the way here, when you cut the bulky yarn, the fibers just kind of go everywhere. Okay, so let's grab our shawl, and now we're going to do the finish work. I'm going to show you how to attach one of them. Let's go all the way down to the bottom point of our shawl. So I'm going to slide that up as far up as I can, and then grab one of your tassels, and what you're simply going to do is, see that corner space? You're just going to simply tie it right on, okay? So just tie it right on, and then what you can do, which is really neat about tassels, you don't need to weave this up into your work. What you can do is take your tapestry needle and you can weave it back down into the tassel. So you might have to kind of shimmy it in there a little bit. And then grab the other strand and just go right down the center, just like that, and pull it through. Now, once again, you might have to grab your scissors. See, I have 2 little long pieces, and we're just gonna Give those a trim. Make sure everything's straight across and nice and flush. And now our tassel is attached, okay? So repeat that for the other 2 tassels. Now again, if you're not into the look of the tassel, you can skip that part or do pom-poms or something else, beads maybe. But we're going to go ahead and attach the other 2 tassels, and then we're going to weave in some of our ends. So let me go ahead and attach the other tassels, and then we'll rejoin, weave in the ends, and our shawl will be complete. Okay, so we finished adding these beautiful tassels, and I've woven in most of the ends, but I saved one so I could show you. It's at the top here. So what you're going to do is just grab your tapestry needle, and see how with bulky yarn there's some plies that are twisted together. Not all bulky yarn, but a lot of it has plies, and it can come undone. So just maybe give it a fresh cut if you need to. And then weave it in, or thread your tapestry needle, and then we're going to weave it in. So just come here. This is where we began the project. So just come in one direction like this with your end. Then bring it back in the other direction to kind of lock it in. You need to wiggle it through there if you need to. And then you're going to just give it a tug like that, and then grab your scissors and trim, and then just kind of straighten things out. So our shawl is complete. It is cozy and bulky and warm and beautiful colors, and it's all ready for you, a gift to yourself or a gift to someone else. It's very, very quick to make. If you're looking for a larger project that doesn't take very long, this is a great shawl for that. So that is how you crochet the Snow Berries Blanket Shawl. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.